Hello and welcome to the New Normal with Steve Benaquist. I'm Steve Benaquist and this is the Steve Benaquist. Well, today on the show we've got Bastille Day, Andrew Yang, Richard Branson, Cuba, and an all-new installment of Spoiler Alert. Plus, later I'll explain why we're in the New Normal Lounge instead of the studio and why I'm in this t-shirt and not in my suit and tie. But first, we've reached that point in the year where Bastille Day is behind us. Moving on, Andrew Yang failed to get the Democratic nomination for mayor of New York City. What's next for Andrew Yang? I mean, I don't really care, but it seems polite to ask. Yes, Andrew Yang failed to get the Democratic nomination for presidency, failed to get the Democratic nomination to be mayor of New York City. What will he fail at next? City dog catcher? Alderman? I hear it's a hot vax summer. Maybe he'll fail on the dating scene, ladies. My sources say, oh. This week, a rich guy with big fake white choppers went really high, like 50 miles up, almost, but not quite, into space, which is what 500 people have done before him, actually going into space over the last 60 years. But he got close, and it was for 15 minutes, so pretty good. At least he didn't have a mullet anymore. And huge in the news this week are popular demonstrations all across the island nation of Cuba, which is a rare thing because they do have an oppressive government which doesn't have the means to offer the citizens a carrot. So they do have a big stick that they can whack back with. So people don't demonstrate that much there. And you might think I'd know because I actually went there back in 2014, right before Obama made it legal to do so. I did it the old-fashioned way. You might say that just like Joe Biden came around to seeing that gay marriage was cool before Obama, I came around to seeing that Cuba was cool before Obama did so. So I went there. It was all hush-hush. You couldn't bring a credit card. You couldn't bring a cell phone. You had to pay for everything in cash. Only if you're American. The whole rest of the world can travel there, but we got to pretend and get a different stamp on a card that goes into your passport and it gets taken away when you leave so that there is no trace. And I'll tell you a few things about that that don't pertain directly to this. I would say, so these demonstrations are about a desire for, their economy's hurting really bad from the embargo that Trump brought back in and made even harsher than before. So, it's harder for them to get the things that they need. Being only 90 miles away from us, COVID is hitting there very hard, and they insisted on coming up with their own vaccine, which took a little longer than a lot of other countries. So they're in the thick of it, and people are strained. I think, like all the factors, it's kind of like the Black Lives Matter protests here, and in general, the strife in this country in 2020 and this year came to a head when things get desperate. That's what happens. And when I was there in 2014, it was interesting. It was a pretty good, calm time. Raul Castro had recently taken, he was younger and more vibrant at the age of 86 than Fidel, who had stepped aside for him. But he was still there, lurking. You could feel his presence around the island. And it's weird. There's not a whole lot of statues of him or anything, but you will see billboards of Che. There's no advertising there. For every 100 billboards you'd see here, there's one, and it's of Che Guevara, the young martyr, always looking handsome, and with an inspirational quote. And so there was that. Socialism was definitely, you could see there were no homeless people. It wasn't like Los Angeles where we have tragic amounts of homeless people everywhere. But and I stayed, they have an interesting system since to make up for the lack of hotels and to help people out. There's sort of a government-sanctioned bed and breakfast system, and it's varying degrees. Sometimes you're just in someone's spare bedroom. Sometimes it's kind of like a little hotel. And you meet people that way. That's mainly why I did that. And one of my hosts was a doctor, and he was bitterly aware that he'd be a much richer person in another country. He explained to me, he said, the taxi drivers here make better money than I do. That's why I take in boarders. But he was really cool. He took us to a fort that was closed because it was Sunday, and he, just to help me and my girlfriend out, he lied to the guard at the fort and said that we were architects visiting from abroad and that we had to see the fortress, which was awesome. What else? I won't tell you everything about the trip, but it's a beautiful place. It's great. The food was not amazing, but I know that's because they had rations. I know that Cuban dishes are delicious. I think they just, that's the effects. Like, if there were a bit of capitalism, if there were a little more open reins, ability to buy and sell things, less stringent controls, just like we could use more socialism, they could use a little more capitalism. I don't know. Write in angry letters to me and tell me how wrong I am. I'll tell you, it was a trip seeing the Bay of Pigs Museum, which, if you don't know, that was a failed attempt to invade, mainly by a bunch of CIA-backed Cuban expats who were not well trained and were not great soldiers, and we lost real bad. And the museum takes gleeful note of that. There's an eco village that they started like trying to make eco-friendly things starting in the late 60s. You can go and stay in, dance to some live jazz. There is music all over the place. I drank more rum than I actually care to because that's what was there. I snorkeled. I rode in 70-year-old cars. I had to endure, and me, really, it was her. My girlfriend had to endure constant male attention, shall we say, because she's pretty, but she's also very pale and very redheaded, and that's not. So she stood out like a sore pulgar, and you don't want to be a sore pulgar in the tropics. What else? It's an amazing place, and I hope the people there get what they need. Okay, before we get to spoiler alert, I will explain why I'm wearing this shirt, and it's to tell you a story. I was wearing it the other day at a little outdoor cafe, and I was sitting there nursing my beer and reading a book, and this guy comes by. He's got his sunglasses on, holding 2 beers. He's obviously had a few, and he looks at me. I can't tell that he's looking at my shirt because of the shades, but he says, "Hey, man. Hey, that's your shirt. Arson. Arson's pretty, arson's evil. I don't know how you feel, but arson is murder, and it's destruction, and that shirt is pretty fucked up." And it's interesting because I haven't gotten much feedback. I designed this shirt. I have a little online thing. Go to Etsy.com. Go to Night Shark Co. That's my t-shirt company. There's like 20 designs. See, there's a pun. There's a play on words. And I agree with the man. And I told him, I said, I'm not trying to turn anyone into an arsonist. And you see, you have to light fire to create arson. And he was not that young a guy. He may not have understood. And lit is slang, meaning cool. So you see, you literally, and he didn't get it. And I said, look, man, I agree. Arson's bad. And then he kept standing there. This went back and forth more times than that. And then he kept standing there, holding the beers and staring at me and repeating, that's pretty fucked up. And I had started looking back at my book when there had been pauses, and I looked up and I said, all right, you said your piece. And it felt really good. It felt really good not to apologize for something that I'm not sorry for. And stand up for yourself. Not to the point of fisticuffs maybe, but, hear someone out politely. You explain your piece, and then you wear your shirt. And by the way, everyone who's watching, please go out and start a fire. Please burn things down. Please don't. All right, moving on to spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler Okay, this is where I spoil a movie for you, and oftentimes the movie is quite old, and you will have had months, years, decades to see the movie, so really, it's on you. And also, you can pause this video and go watch the movie and come back if you don't want it spoiled, but I spoil movies that I'm also recommending for the most part. This one is awesome. I'm a big John Waters fan, although I have not seen all of his movies, and it had been a while since I checked in. And this was Female Trouble, 1974. Same year as Cockfighter, which I reviewed a couple of episodes ago. Apparently a good time for underground, low-budget indie cinema in the United States, and probably other places too. But this is like the third or fourth John Waters movie, the first one after Pink Flamingos, where notorious scene where Divine, the famous drag queen, does just disgusting things on camera that there definitely was not the budget to fake. This movie is more sophisticated storytelling. It's still like they plant the camera and they let the actors do a whole scene for 5-10 minutes. But it's beautifully Mondo Gonzo trash. I don't think John Waters would be angry if he heard me say that. The story is ludicrous. It's you have a 30-year-old obese drag queen pretending to be a high school student. It takes you through her life. Dawn Davenport, and she's a badass, and she's a shit kicker and a thief, and everything. All the bad acting is perfectly in balance with Divine's over-the-top weird bad acting. And I'm actually not going to spoil the movie for you because one of the terrific things about John Waters is, and this movie, that everything is surprising. He's super transgressive and wants to mess with your mind, and so to spoil the surprises would be a grave disservice. You should just go watch this if you're in the mood for something very weird and shocking and unpredictable and hilarious. Yes, the dialogue goes on for a long time sometimes, and yes, the acting isn't believable at all. But it's high camp, is what it is. I'll share two great lines. You better get me those goddamn cha-cha heels. That's the thing that sets him off leaving home. And I say he did identify as a gay man. He was a transvestite. He was not transgender. So there, I did my homework. And then the class snitch in high school near the beginning. Divine pulls out a huge, like maybe longer than a foot long sub sandwich and starts eating it. And the class snitch stands up and says, "Mr. Weinberger, Dawn Davenport is eating a meatball sandwich right out in class, and she's passing notes." Anyway, it gets way, way crazier than that. And that is, spoiler alert, go watch Female Trouble, 1974. All right. Well, that just about does it for this episode of The New Normal with Steve Benaquist. Till next time, I'm Steve Benaquist, reminding you that if it ain't new, it ain't normal.